Hello and welcome to this video about the Plague Marines, the corrupted warriors of Nurgle. In this video, we will explore general lore about them while looking through some AI-generated images of Plague Marines, created by Midjourney, so do not be surprised if some images are kind of weird. If you want to support the channel, leave a like and consider subscribing for content like that. Now, let's dive into the rotting world of the Plague Marines. Plague Marines are those Chaos Space Marines who have wholly dedicated their lives and souls to the service of the Chaos God Nurgle. Within their corpulent and disgusting power armor, their bodies are bloated with disease, swollen with corruption and rank with decay, even as they no longer are capable of feeling pain, the greatest mutational gift given to them by the Plague Lord. The first Plague Marines were warriors of the Death Guard Legion, trapped in the warp upon their starships when the virulent destroyer plague struck their fleet. Mortarion and his legion offered themselves up to the service of the Lord of Decay in return for their lives and the end of the constant suffering caused by the unnatural disease. Their bodies became bloated and swollen with the corruption festering within them, but they no longer felt the agony of the warppox and did not die from its horrific symptoms. Since then, many heretic Astartes have dedicated themselves to Nurgle, though few achieve the vaunted ranks of the Death Guard. Those who truly wish to join this most fouetted of cadres must first swear loyalty to the Primarch Mortarion. Only then will Nurgle bestow upon them the corrupting ague that created the Plague Marines. Regardless of allegiance, all Plague Marines have disgusting, rotted bodies that stink of decay. The putrescent slime that oozes from their many weeping sores corrodes their armor and burns their skin, but despite their horrific disfigurements, the Plague Marines are fearsome warriors indeed. Their rotting brains are inured to the agony of bodily corruption, making them all but immune to the pain or debilitation caused by the weapons of the enemy. Not for nothing are these repugnant foot soldiers considered the most resilient of all the Chaos Space Marines. As well as fighting at the behest of the Lords of Chaos, the Plague Marines dedicate their lives to spreading corruption and decay across the galaxy. History. The origins of the Plague Marines can be traced back to the early 31st millennium. During the opening days of the Horus Heresy, Ignatius Grulger was the commander, captain, of the Death Guard Legion's Second Grand Company. During the massacre of the traitor Legion's loyalists on Istvan III that initiated the heresy, Grulger was posted on the Imperial frigate Eisenstein to kill the loyalist Captain Nathaniel Garrow and his 100-strong company of Death Guard Astartes. Grulger was initially killed in a firefight on the gun decks of the Eisenstein, after a stray bolt pistol shot released the Life-Eater virus within a virus bomb that had been intended to be used against the loyalist Astartes on Istvan III. After the successful escape of the Eisenstein and the following trip through the warp, the body of Grulger was reanimated by the machinations of Nurgle as the first of the Plague Marines. Following a desperate battle, Grulger's body was destroyed after the Eisenstein made an emergency transition into real space. His soul banished into the warp. The Plague Lord eventually raised Grulger once more as one of its demon princes. The Plague Marines later appeared at the start of the Siege of Terra late in the Horus Heresy. The Death Guard Legion had become becalmed and trapped within the warp where the virulent destroyer plague, later known to the Imperium as Nurgle's Rot, attacked their bodies. For the Death Guard, there was nothing more terrifying than the plague that rendered their legendary resilience meaningless. These were warriors who had been immune to the diseases, contagions, toxins and pollutions that bedeviled normal men. What the Death Guard endured was unimaginable, yet none suffered more than Mortarion himself. Unable to endure the suffering any longer, the Primarch and his legion offered themselves up to the service of the Lord of Decay in return for their lives. Their bodies became bloated and swollen with the corruption festering within them, but they no longer felt the agony of the warppox and did not die from the horrific symptoms. When the Death Guard Legion fleet emerged from the warp above Terra, they bore little resemblance to the proud Astartes who had entered. Their once gleaming grey armor and the proud heraldry of the once imperial champions was no more. In their stead was a sickly pall of greenish hue. Each Astartes was now a bloated grotesque, covered in pockmarks and boils, scabs and putrescent sores. They bore the stink of corruption as the very air about them was clouded with swarming flies. Even their weapons and war machines had been mutated by the energies of the warp. The Death Guard had become walking pestilence carriers. They had become Plague Marines. The Plague Marines prefer short-ranged firefights. where they can truly appreciate the festering carnage they inflict upon their enemies even as they laugh off the bolts and lost blasts directed back at them. Their decaying brains are inured to the agony of the bodily corruption that runs rampant in their diseased carcasses, making them all but immune to the pain or discomfort caused by battle wounds. The blessed reek of corruption, the sight of freshly suppurating flesh and the blossoming gore of an infected wound, these are things to be grateful for. Those who do not appreciate Grandfather Nurgle's bounty are soon laid low. Should the enemy close to within arm's reach, the Plague Marines will attack with plague-riddled knives, and even hurl toxic blight grenades, vile inventions containing virulent toxins that eat away at armor and fill the air with thick clouds of blinding, pathogenic spores. The plague fleets of Nurgle are often led by the Plague Marines of the Lord of Decay, spreading their filth the width and breadth of the galaxy. These plague fleets carry Nurgle's followers to inhabited worlds where the Plague Marines' destructive raids are inevitably followed by massive outbreaks of no less destructive contagions. Once these plague ships are abandoned or their crews finally destroyed, their hulks float back into the warp and eventually find their way back to the Plague Planet, where they may be recrewed for new incursions into the material universe. During a plague ship's journey through the warp, the interior of the Voidcraft erupts with large, furry black flies that fill its holds with their decaying carcasses. When the plague ship reaches a world, the Plague Marines disembark to make planetfall. As soon as their transport's hatches open, a thick cloud of insects is released, ready to spread its foulness over a virgin planet. The fly is sacred to Nurgle, for it feasts upon the rotten and the foul. When they come on in a great swarm, these diminutive creatures can spread a plague with incredible speed, infecting, infesting, hatching and multiplying in celebration of Nurgle's bounteous cycle with each new day. The symbol of the fly is therefore common amongst the Plague Marines, with elements of its form echoed on the mutant bodies of the Death Guard, Nurgle's chosen sons. Plague Marines make up the majority of the Death Guard Traitor Legion of Chaos Space Marines, but not all Plague Marines are members of the Death Guard. Any Chaos Space Marine or Renegade Space Marine who dedicates himself to the Plague Lord Nurgle may become a Plague Marine. Thank you for watching this video about the Plague Marines. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and a comment below. Until next time, remember, death to the false emperor. And praise Nurgle.